My name's Tessa McKay, and I'm from a small town in northern Idaho that barely shows up on most maps. We had one stoplight, one high school, and way too many opinions. I used to think I'd grow old there, maybe take over my dad's hardware store, marry some guy from my graduating class who liked trucks and beer. But that was before I found out I was good at something no one there ever understood. This is the first time I'm telling this story. Not just parts of it, all of it. If you're here, thank you. Really, I'm not doing this for attention. I just need someone to listen. If you're watching or reading this from wherever you are, drop a comment and let me know where you're from. It helps more than you think. And if anything here speaks to you, please like and subscribe. It helps this story reach more people who might feel like I did, lost, invisible, and trying to be seen. Anyway, I was 19 when my mom told me something that cracked me right down the middle. It was right after I'd come home from my first semester at college, a place I'd clawed my way into with scholarships, night shifts, and pure grit. I was sitting at the kitchen table, still wearing my bookstore uniform, reeking of vanilla lattes and cardboard. She was folding laundry like she always did, watching one of those true crime shows where everyone dies in the first 5 minutes. And she said, casually, without even looking up, "Some people just aren't made for more, Tessa. They're the ones who hold the camera, not the ones in the picture." She didn't say it to be cruel. That's the part that hurt the most. She truly thought she was giving me something useful, preparing me for a life she assumed I wasn't built to outgrow. I nodded and pretended not to care. But those words, they sat in my chest like wet cement. From then on, I stopped telling my family when good things happened. I stopped expecting them to understand. When I got into a graduate program in political journalism, they didn't ask what that meant. When I got an internship with one of the biggest investigative teams in New York, my mom said, "Is that a real job or just experience?" And when I covered my first major protest, camera slung across my chest, adrenaline in my blood, my dad just said, "Hope you stayed safe." They weren't mean, just uninterested. Like my life had split off into a language they never learned to speak. My little brother Taylor joined the fire department and got a parade in town. I got nominated for a regional press award and got a cool in a text. No emoji, so I stopped coming home. Instead, I built a life in the city, one built on deadlines and caffeine and rooftops where no one knew my name. I dated here and there, mostly men who didn't ask too many questions. And when I was alone, which was often, I told myself I liked it that way. Then came him. His name was Aaron. We met during a shoot. He was the fixer assigned to a segment we were doing in Detroit, someone local, someone with street smarts, someone who could get us where the story was. He had this quiet confidence about him, like he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. At first, I thought he was arrogant. By day 3, I realized he just listened before he spoke, a rare trait in journalism or anywhere else. Really, we spent 10 days filming in neighborhoods most people don't visit unless something's burning. He never flinched. Not when a guy flashed a gun near the bodega. Not when I nearly stepped on a syringe in an alley. Not even when our gear got stolen and we had to file reports in 3 different precincts. Instead, he bought me tacos from a truck with no name, taught me how to tell if someone was lying just by watching their hands, and said one night, after a long day in the rain, that I looked like someone who didn't know how to rest. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked. He shrugged. "Just seems like you're always trying to prove you're allowed to be here. You already are." That stuck with me more than I wanted it to. When the segment wrapped, he gave me his number, but didn't say, "Call me." Just said, "I'll be around." And he was. For months, we texted. Nothing heavy. Just small updates, dumb memes, headlines we knew the other person would care about. Then one night, after shoot went sideways in Chicago, and I needed somewhere quiet to crash, I called him. He didn't ask why. Just told me the code to his building. That's when it started. Not a relationship, not yet. But a kind of trust I wasn't used to. I didn't tell anyone about him, not my parents. Not my coworkers. It felt like if I said his name out loud, the world would take him back, but life doesn't let you stay hidden for long. 3 months later, my little brother announced he was getting married. Small ceremony back home. And my mom called me not to invite me but to say, I figured you'd be too busy to come, but Tyler said he'd like you there. If you can. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I wanted to prove something. Maybe. I just wanted them to see I wasn't some failure who flamed out in a dorm room. Either way, I booked the ticket, packed a black dress that didn't try too hard, and told myself I could handle it. I even told Aaron, and he said something that I've held on to ever since. Go, be the storm they didn't expect. I didn't understand what that meant at the time. The moment I landed in Idaho, I regretted saying yes. The air smelled like pine and diesel, and the airport was the same two gates, one snack bar, and a wall of faded community flyers. My dad was supposed to pick me up. He didn't. I ended up calling a rideshare, and the guy who drove me was an old classmate who still wore his high school Letterman jacket.
He didn't recognize me. That kind of says it all. Back at the house, not much had changed.
Same chipped mailbox, same dog-eared deck chair with a broken armrest. Inside, the furniture had moved, but the silence stayed the same. Mom was setting up folding chairs in the garage, muttering about head counts. She didn't look up when I walked in. Just said, you can sleep in the den. Don't put your suitcase on the couch, it's new. Dad came in from the backyard, carrying a cooler full of beer. He nodded at me. You made it. No hug, no. How was your flight? Just, you made it. Tyler and his fiancée, Becca, were sitting on the back porch when I stepped outside. They both looked surprised to see me. Becca stood up first, her face lighting up in that sweet, awkward way people smile when they're trying too hard. Tessa! Wow, I didn't think you were coming, she said, hugging me like I was a distant cousin, not her future sister --law. Tyler followed with a half shrug. Didn't think you'd have time. I made time, I said. Becca smiled again. That's so nice. You've probably seen so many cool places now. You still in, TV? Something like that, I said. I could have explained. Could have told them about my recent documentary screening at an indie festival. Or how I'd just pitched a story to Vase, but I didn't. What would have been the point? We had dinner that night in the garage because the kitchen wasn't big enough for guests. They put me next to Aunt Linda, who spent the meal talking about her gluten allergy and showing me pictures of her cat dressed like movie stars. I wasn't even in the slideshow my mom put together for Tyler and Becca. Every photo was of him growing up playing football, graduating, posing in uniform with Dad at the firehouse. The last picture was a group shot from his engagement party. I was there standing in the back, mostly cropped out. I didn't say anything. After dessert, someone brought out a box of board games and people started picking teams. Tyler looked at Becca and said, You take Mom and Dad, I'll take the fun ones. Then he turned to the rest of the group, pointing to our cousins, one by one. My name never came up. I went upstairs instead. Sat on the floor of the guest room the den with my back against a bookcase full of Reader's Digest and old yearbooks. I could hear them laughing downstairs. I texted Aaron. Me, should have stayed in New York. Aaron, probably. But you didn't, which means you're meant to see something through me. I'm not sure they even see me. Aaron, then make them. Not with noise. With presence. I didn't reply. The next day was the rehearsal dinner. Everyone was dressed up like it was prom. My mom told me to wear something flattering but quiet, whatever that meant. I picked a navy jumpsuit with sleeves and no drama. Becca wore a lace dress that made her look like a catalog bride. The whole setup was being held at the local VFW hall, decorated with white balloons and twinkle lights that blinked like they were on sale. I barely found my name card at the table. It was next to the DJ booth, far from the head table. I sat between the sound tech and a neighbor's teenage daughter who scrolled TikTok the entire night. At one point, Dad stood up to give a toast. He cleared his throat and said, I always hoped Tyler would grow up to be a man with integrity. And he did, just like I did. Just like my father did. The room clapped. Then he said, he's the kind of son that makes a father proud. It wasn't what he said. It was what he didn't. I stared down at my untouched glass of wine and whispered to myself, don't do this. Don't fall into it again. But I already had. Afterward, as everyone danced to country music and butchered line steps, I stepped outside. The parking lot was empty. Save for a couple of trucks with fogged-up windows and teenagers smoking behind a dumpster, Aaron called me right on cue.
Hey, he said, made it through dinner? Barely.
Need a voice that knows who you are? I nodded, then realized he couldn't see me. Yeah, I see you, Tess, he said, even when they don't. I hung up before I cried. Not because of what he said, but because I didn't know how to believe it. Back inside, I ran into Mom by the bathrooms. She looked me up and down and said, "Try not to draw attention at the ceremony tomorrow. It's not your day." That did it. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't even roll my eyes. I just nodded and walked away, because I realized then it had never been my day. Not once. Not when I won that high school writing award. Not when I graduated summa cum laude. Not even when my name showed up in a national byline. I was always the girl behind the camera. Never the one in the picture, but I had one more day left in town. And I wasn't going to disappear quietly. The wedding day started with overcast skies and the scent of wet grass coming through the window. My mom was already banging around in the kitchen by the time I rolled off the lumpy fold-out bed. I hadn't slept much. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice again. "Don't draw attention. It's not your day." Tyler had given me no part in the ceremony, not a reading, not a speech, not even a job passing out programs. I wasn't a bridesmaid. I wasn't even asked to stand in the photos. Just family row 3 on the left. I took longer than I needed getting dressed. I chose a simple forest green dress I'd worn once to a work gala. It wasn't flashy, but it fit me well. I curled my hair, put on soft makeup, and added small gold earrings Aaron had given me for no reason at all, months ago. I stared at my reflection in the mirror and said out loud, "Show up anyway." I walked into that church like I belonged there. No slouching. No shrinking. Even though no one noticed, even though no one turned, I felt like I'd crossed some invisible threshold. I wasn't trying to be seen anymore. I just wanted to feel real. The ceremony itself was fine, predictable. Vows, laughter, tears.
Tyler.
Teared up a little, and Becca beamed like someone who'd been practicing for this moment since childhood. Everyone clapped. Cameras clicked. The photographer, a local woman with a booming voice, called out, "Family photos at the front." I stood back. I knew how this worked. Then, as the last round of group pictures wrapped up, the photographer looked around and asked, "Is this everyone?" Becca's mom said, "Yes, I think we've got everyone who matters." That one hit like a dart to the ribs. I turned to leave when Aaron's voice came through my phone speaker. I'd left him a voice note before the ceremony, just a rambling update. He'd sent one back. "Aaron, they don't get to decide if you matter. They don't get that kind of power. You're there. That's enough." I took a deep breath and kept walking, not out the door toward the reception. It was held at a fancy-ish barn venue outside town. String lights everywhere, mason jars with sunflowers, a donut wall near the open bar. I grabbed a seat in the back near the bathrooms. Again, no assigned seat. Becca's side had reserved signs all over. My name was nowhere. I watched as people laughed and hugged and toasted. Then something weird happened. A woman from the local paper approached me, Cindy something, I think, and said, "Aren't you Tessa McKay? Didn't you work on that Flint water piece last year?" I blinked. "Yeah, that was me." She nodded slowly. "That was real journalism. I showed it to my students. Mind if I sit?" That might have been the first time anyone in that room saw me for something real. She stayed for 10 minutes. We talked about how newsrooms were shrinking, how trust in media was down, and how women still get talked over in editorial rooms. When she left, she said, "Keep making noise, we need more of you." I sat there stunned. Just as the first dances started. My dad walked over, not to talk, just to hand me his jacket. "You look cold," he said. It was the first kind gesture I'd gotten from him in years. Later, while everyone danced to a Garth Brooks song, Tyler came over with a beer in hand. "Thanks for coming," he said, like he hadn't avoided me. For days, I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't seem like you expected me to," he shrugged. Didn't think you'd want to. That's when I realized we weren't estranged. We were strangers. Tyler, do you even know what I do? I asked. He hesitated. You travel? Film stuff? I produce international reports for broadcast and digital. I cover politics, civil rights, corruption cases. I've been to refugee camps. I've interviewed whistleblowers. I was on the ground during the Chicago protests. He looked stunned. Oh, wow. I guess Mom never really said. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of course she didn't, and he never asked, that night. After the bouquet toss and the cake cutting and the sparkler exit, I slipped away before anyone could corner me. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. I got in my rental car and drove to the only place in town that felt like mine. The overlook above the lake where I used to sit in high school and dream of getting out. The stars were out now, the sky finally clear. I parked, stepped out, and called Aaron. You still awake? I asked. Always. You okay? Not really. But I think I'm done trying. He was quiet for a moment. Then said, Good, you were never meant to beg for space in your own story. I sat on the hood of the car, feeling the cold metal through my dress, the wind picking up my hair. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel angry. Just done. Done chasing people who never looked back. Done hoping the story would change if I stayed quiet enough. I wasn't quiet anymore. Back in New York. I hit the ground running. I had barely unpacked before my producer Jill called me into the office. We were behind on a piece we were doing on misuse of disaster relief funds after Hurricane Ezra. A local tipster had sent in a cache of records, invoices, and leaked emails. It was a mess. One of those stories no one wanted to touch because it meant going up against city contractors and government funding committees. This story could make someone, Jill said. Or break someone. You up for it? I said yes without blinking, the first night I started going through the files. Aaron brought over takeout and stayed on my couch reading through them with me. He was the only person who didn't ask why I kept chasing stories that made other people uncomfortable. This is why you don't fit in back home,
He said gently, handing me a highlighter. You make people see what they don't want to.
I wanted to kiss him. I didn't, not yet. The deeper we dug, the worse it got. City officials had rerouted money meant for rebuilding efforts to private contractors' friends and cousins of cousins. Some of the companies didn't even exist. Others had billed for work that never happened, but one name stopped me cold. B. McKay and Sons Contracting. I stared at the screen. That was my uncle's company. Uncle Brat, my dad's older brother. He'd run a mid-sized contracting business out of Boise for years. I hadn't thought of him in a while. We were never close. But there it was. On a signed invoice, billing for roof repairs at a property that didn't exist. Holy crap, I muttered. Aaron looked over my shoulder. That's family? Unfortunately. What do you want to do? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I did. I reported it, quietly, through the official investigative desk, not in a blaze of glory. I flagged it like I would any other lead. Gave it a source tag, let the editorial board make the call. They decided to move forward with the story with me on it. A week later, the segment aired. My name was in the credits. My voice narrated the report. And the screen lit up with documentation, voice memos, and interviews. One of the invoice was shown, redacted slightly, but still recognizable. My phone didn't stop ringing for 2 days. I ignored every number I didn't. No. Then came the one I couldn't ignore. Dad. He didn't even say hello. Just opened with, why the hell would you put our family in the middle of this? I sat in my apartment, laptop still open, Aaron in the kitchen making coffee. I took a breath. Because it's news, Dad. Because people have a right to know. Because your brother committed fraud.
He made one mistake. No, I snapped. He made a series of choices.
And they hurt people. There was silence. I thought you were better than this, he said. No, I replied, calm but tired. You thought I'd stay small. Then I hung up. Aaron didn't ask what was said. Just handed me coffee and sat next to me on the couch. Thigh pressed against mine. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was solid like a foundation. A few days later, Becca texted me. Tyler's not mad. He understands. Just give it time with your parents, okay? I didn't respond. I wasn't ready, but I didn't block her either. That weekend, the story got picked up nationally. My name trended for a day on media circles. Emails poured in. I was nominated for an independent award. Aaron took me out to celebrate at a Korean BBQ place in Queens where we ordered too much and talked too little because we were both smiling too hard. On the subway ride home, he kissed me. No warning, no speech. Just a slow, certain kiss that said, I've been waiting. So had I. We didn't talk about what it meant. Not yet. It was enough to know that I didn't have to shrink around him. That he wasn't scared of the version of me that made other people uncomfortable. But the fallout from the story wasn't over. 2 weeks later, I got a manila envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a copy of my birth certificate and an old newspaper clipping I'd never seen before. It was dated the year. I turned to. The headline read, Fraud Investigation Dropped After Admin Error B, MCKAY Clarity Scanned. The article, something about a file getting misplaced. Evidence lost, case closed, and suddenly a memory surfaced. I must have been maybe 7, sitting on the porch with my mom while Uncle Brad stood nearby smoking. I'd asked him something stupid about money, and he'd laughed real bitter and said, some things just disappear if you wait long enough. I had no idea who sent the envelope, but someone wanted me to look deeper. Aaron watched me from the couch as I reread the clipping. This story's not over, I said. He nodded. Then neither are you. Here is part 5 of the rewritten story. The emotional tension continues rising. As Tessa uncovers deeper truths and takes her first steps toward reclaiming her voice both in her career and family, the envelope had no fingerprints, no postmark, no return address. It was either hand-delivered or run through a private service. I checked building security footage, nothing. The doorman said it was just there in the box. I didn't tell Jill, not yet. She'd want to loop legal, and I didn't have anything concrete to give them, just a decades-old headline and a gut feeling. But I told Aaron. He read the article twice, then said, somebody wants you to finish what your newsroom didn't start. That night, I searched old archives, things from the public record, case notes, scraps of local journalism, government payout lists. Over and over again, Brad McKay's name showed up. Sometimes in full, sometimes shortened to be McKay LLC or Mountain Holdings. Always tied to disaster funds, public maintenance, rapid infrastructure grants. Always a little out of focus. I requested a Freedom of Information report on the 1995 case. While I waited, I reached out to a woman named Valerie Klein, a local reporter who'd written a piece titled The Payout That Disappeared. It was buried in a defunct blog, the kind of digital graveyard nobody visits anymore, she answered. On the first ring, I thought everyone forgot about that story, she said. I didn't. Got me laid off. I met her at a diner off the West Side Highway. She was older now in a pilled cardigan and with ink-stained fingers. She didn't waste time. They shut it down before I could go national, she said, stirring her tea. Backdated invoices. Phantom permits. But someone in the records office made it disappear. Said the original files were corrupted. You know, how many cases I've seen get buried under the phrase, technical error. I didn't, but I was starting to. What do you need from me? She asked. Whatever you didn't print, I said. She slid a USB across the table. If you're going to burn it down, she said, do it right. I went home and opened it. Scans, interviews, a voice memo from a former city inspector who said he was pressured to sign off on half-finished projects. An old audit summary showing a $3.6 million discrepancy in disaster fund usage unexplained. Unresolved. Dates lined up with Uncle Brad's biggest expansion. This wasn't just family mess. This was fraud, buried under bureaucracy and bad memory. I sat with that for a while. Aaron came over with his usual quiet energy. I didn't speak. Just pointed to the screen. He leaned in and said, this could level people. Yeah. Are you ready for that? I thought about my parents. About the dinner table where no one asked me questions. About the slideshow where I didn't exist. About the backyard where Tyler and I used to race barefoot across the grass until our lungs burned. and I said, I think I've always been ready. I took it to Jill. She didn't blink. Just said, you know what this means. I know. It'll rattle cages. High ones. Good. She smiled. You want the byline? I want the truth. 2 days later, I got the FOIA response. The case had been internally closed within 48 hours of the original complaint. No reason given. No digital backup available. The person listed as case handler? No longer with the department, but there was one note in the margin, scribbled on the file's last page. Subject has family and enforcement. Request discretion. I felt sick. I called my dad. I need to ask you something, I said. Did you pull strings for Uncle Brad in 1995? Long pause. I did what I thought was best for the family, he finally said. That's not an answer, he exhaled. I made a call. Just one. Told a guy to be patient, that's all. You interfered with an investigation. I protected my brother. You'd do the same. No, I said. I wouldn't. Silence again, he added, quieter this time. You don't get it, Tess. Family has to stick, even when it's hard. No, Dad. Family has to be accountable. That's what makes it worth anything. We didn't hang up angry. But we hung up far apart. The story ran a week later, long form, double segment, with Jill and me on voiceover. Valerie got a contributor credit. We didn't name my family, but the names were there in public documents. Anyone paying attention could draw the line. Tyler did. He called me the night after it aired. I had no idea, he said, about any of it. About Dad, about Brad, about you. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not looking for sorry, I said. I just want you to see me. I do now, he asked to meet. Just the two of us. We sat in Central Park, by the fountain near the old bandshell. He brought coffee. I brought all my mixed feelings. I used to think you left because you thought you were better than us, he said. I left because I couldn't breathe.
He nodded. Makes sense now. And it did, not everything.
But enough. A week later, I got a certified letter from my mom. Inside was a photo of me and her on the back porch, years ago, when I was maybe 6. She wrote, you weren't invisible. I just didn't know how to see the version of you that wasn't safe. I'm learning. I didn't cry. But I held the photo for a long time. That Friday, Aaron took me out to dinner. Not a celebration. Not a victory lap. Just a night. After dessert, he said, you know, I'm not here because you're impressive. Yeah, I'm here because you make the hard thing feel possible. And that night, when we got home, we didn't talk about work or family or stories. We just sat on the floor, backs against the couch, and let our shoulders touch in silence, for the first time in a long time. I felt like I wasn't holding my breath. It was spring again when I got the email. Subject line, Keynote Inquiry Columbia. School of Journalism. They wanted me to speak. Not about being a woman in the field. Not about ethics or reporting from conflict zones. But about voice, how you find it, and what it costs to use it. I almost said no. But Aaron convinced me. You talk to millions of people with a camera. What's a few hundred in a room? I'm better behind the lens, I said. No, you're just used to hiding there. He was right. Again, the day of the event, I wore black slacks, a loose navy blouse, and the same gold earrings he gave me months ago. I wasn't trying to look powerful. I just wanted to look like myself. The hall was packed. I saw younger versions of me everywhere, girls in ponytails, guys with DSLR cameras, non-binary kids with notebooks and hungry eyes. I stood at the podium, cleared my throat, and told them this. I didn't grow up thinking my voice mattered. In fact, I spent most of my early life trying to shrink it so other people wouldn't be uncomfortable. But the thing about silence is, it keeps growing. It wraps around your identity like fog, until you're not sure what's missing. Only that something is, I found my voice by accident. Through injustice, through disappointment, through the heartbreak of not being believed by the people who should have loved me first. But here's the thing. You don't need to wait for permission to speak. You don't need credentials or applause or perfect hair or a family who understands. You need only one thing, to believe your truth deserves air. That's what journalism is. Not just fact, not just exposure, but voice. And I hope you use yours. When it ended, the room stood. Not for me, but for what we all needed to hear. Even me. Afterward, I walked back to the apartment I shared with Aaron, now something that had happened gradually, naturally, like books spreading from one shelf to another until they all just lived together. He'd left me a note on the fridge that said, "You filled a room today. I hope you felt it." I did. That night, I got a call from Becca. She was pregnant. Tyler was glowing. They wanted to visit. Not just me, but New York. "We want the baby to know their aunt," she said. I told them, yes. A week later, my mom texted me a picture. It was an old one of all of us, cropped poorly. "I'd been cut out years ago to make it fit," she wrote. This time I framed the original. I won the whole story. It made me sit down. Because for the first time, they weren't just letting me back in, they were admitting I'd been missing all along. A month later, we all had dinner at my place. Aaron cooked. Tyler brought a bottle of wine. Mom helped slice apples for the salad. Dad sat next to me, quiet but present. When dessert came out, Becca pulled out her phone and asked, "Can we take a new picture?" No one moved to crop. No one adjusted their seat. And I didn't have to lean into fit. We just belong. And now, if you're still here, still reading, still listening, thank you. You don't know what that means. Because telling this story, my story, wasn't about reliving the pain. It was about reclaiming the space I was told not to take. If this spoke to you in any way, please leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what part hit you. And if you can, please like this. It lets me know someone out there sees this. And subscribe. It really does help stories like mine travel further. Someone else out there might need to know they're not invisible either. We don't always get closure in life, but we do get the chance to choose our voice over silence. Every single day. Thanks for hearing mine. Tessa. This is my first story. Please subscribe.